The first time Leela heard the phrase power plant, she laughed. She was 8 years old, standing barefoot at the edge of the family marsh, dragonflies skimming the water, while rows of reeds shimmered in the wind. Beneath the surface, hidden in black mud and braided roots, lay the real machinery of the world. Not turbines, not smokestacks, not reactors. Mud. By the time Leela turned 30, every home in the Delta ran on wetlands. After the grid collapse, when drought, cyber attacks, and aging infrastructure finally snapped the old centralized system, cities learned energy that comes from one place can fall in one place, so they turned everywhere. Engineers remembered the old research. Microbial fuel cells, plant microbial arrays, rice paddies wired like batteries. At first, it was dismissed as novelty science. Mudwatts, critics called it. But mudwatts never ran out. They only grew. Leela worked as a wetland electrician. Her toolkit was strange. Carbon felt rolls, corrosion-resistant wire, ceramic spacers, waterproof junction boxes. She spent her days knee-deep in rice paddies, weaving electrode mats beneath roots like careful embroidery. The system was elegant. Under the waterlogged soil, microbes feasted on sugar leaking from plant roots. As they digested, they released electrons. Those electrons traveled into buried carbon mats, anodes, then up through wiring into oxygen-rich cathodes at the surface. Each square meter produced only a water cell, laughable once. But no one built 1 square meter. They built thousands. Marshes were divided into energy plots, rows wired in series for voltage, fields wired in parallel for current. Entire communities built energy commons, living wetlands that powered homes, schools, and clinics. Children learned early, don't trample the reeds, because that's someone's refrigerator electricity. At sunset, Leela walked the perimeter of Delta Sector 7. LED lights flickered on across the floating homes. Warm gold against violet sky. All of it powered by the breathing, eating, unseen labor of microbes below. She paused by a voltage monitor post. Output, 1,204 watts. Steady. A decade ago, her grandmother's house required half an acre of marsh to power it. Now, with improved electrode spacing and microbial cultivation techniques, they needed far less. Biofilm management has become a science. Wetland health meant grid stability. The phrase energy independence has changed meaning. It no longer meant oil reserves. It meant healthy soil. But of course, not everyone liked it. Up north, the old corporations had tried to patent engineered microbial strains. They sold premium bacteria in sealed cartridges, promising double output. Some cities bought in. The Delta refused. "We don't own the mud," Leela's mother used to say. "We partner with it." The Delta's system was open source, community maintained. If your neighbor's marsh went down, you lent them amperage. Energy had become local, visible, shared. Power had become a verb. One evening, a storm rolled in harder than predicted. Rain hammered the paddies. Water levels rose. Oxygen gradients shifted. Sector 7's output began to fluctuate. 900 watts, 780 watts, 600 watts. Leela grabbed her boots and ran. Too much water meant that the cathodes weren't getting enough oxygen. Without that balance, electron flow stalled. The microbes were still eating, but the current was choking. She waded in and began lifting surface cathode frames higher, adjusting floats, restoring the air gap. "Why can't we just build a backup gas plant?" one of the apprentices shouted over the thunder. Leela grinned. "You're standing in it," she laughed. They worked for hours, hands numb, rain soaking their clothes. Slowly, the numbers started to climb. 700 watts, 950, 1,110. By the time the storm passed, lights glowed steady again across the water. Weeks later, Leela attended a naming ceremony for a newborn girl. In the Delta, when a child was born, a new square of marsh was planted in their honor, an expansion of the energy commons. The family installed fresh carbon mats beneath the soil, wired into the array. The baby would grow, the reeds would grow, the power would grow. The elder, who led the ceremony, spoke softly. Once, power meant domination, extraction, burning what could not be returned. She gestured to the water. Now, power means tending, feeding what feeds you. The community placed seedlings into the mud. Leela pressed her palm into the soil, feeling warmth beneath. Microbial life buzzing invisibly, tirelessly converting sunlight's leftovers into current. She imagined electrons beginning their quiet journey upward into homes, into stoves, into lights. She imagined the word power plant, whispered in old textbooks. Smokestacks and concrete. Then she looked around at the marsh, alive, with frogs and herons and children chasing fireflies. This was the new power plant, rooted, breathing, and shared. Beneath every step they took, the earth hummed back. The real scientific term is called microbial fuel cells, and when plants are involved, they're often called plant microbial fuel cells. Although the story is fictional, microbial energy is not. It's real bioelectrochemistry. Plants photosynthesize and create sugars. Some of those sugars leak out through the roots into the soil. Soil microbes feast on those sugars. During their digestion, microbes release electrons. If you give those electrons a path, a carbon felt plus wire, they flow. And boom, tiny electricity. It's not the plant acting like a battery, it's actually the microbial underground power grid doing the work. Wetlands are ideal because they naturally create oxygen-free zones below. They create oxygen-rich zones above, and they're perfect conditions for electron movement. You can use single plants, like peace lilies or cattails, to wire together many microbial cells. It gets a whole lot more interesting when instead of using just one plant or a few plants, you use an entire marsh. Or what if you used an entire rice paddy? Well, researchers have already tested this concept in agricultural wetlands, including rice fields. Rice paddies are perfect because they're flooded. They are anaerobic below the surface, they contain massive microbial populations, and the roots constantly leak organic material. Imagine each square meter of wetland acting as a tiny biological battery. Now imagine wiring many microbial cells together. So stacking the cells for higher voltage would be just like regular batteries. Microbial fuel cells can be connected in series to increase voltage, and they can be connected in parallel to increase current. Agencies like DARPA, the U.S. Army Research Laboratory, and Office of Naval Research have funded microbial fuel cell research for remote environmental sensors, for long-duration, low-power devices, and for self-sustaining field monitoring. Would it make sense to explore powering jungle sensors from wetlands? Absolutely. Would it replace lithium batteries? No, probably not. Great for unattended sensors, but not so great for tactical electronics. If you had a large marsh, hundreds of microbial cells, and proper wiring configuration, you might be able to power environmental sensors, data loggers, ultra-low power transmitters, and trickle charge capacitors. You would not be able to power military radios, drones, or satellite uplinks, at least not with current technology. It's renewable, it's silent, it's camouflaged, it's self-sustaining, and it's carbon neutral. It essentially turns wetlands into living biobatteries. Microbial energy is real. You can generate electricity from wetlands using carbon felt and titanium wire. And you can stack many cells to increase the voltage. Field research in rice paddies has shown 1 to 3 watts per square meter under very good conditions. So we'll use an optimistic but reasonable estimate. 1 watt per square meter. So a small LED bulb would be equal to 5 watts. A brighter LED bulb would be equal to 10 watts. The calculations for a 5-watt bulb would be about 54 square feet, roughly the size of a small bathroom. In theory, a small rice paddy the size of a modest patio could continuously power 1 LED bulb. The average small U.S. home uses about 10,000 kilowatts per year, so that's about 1,140 watts continuous average load. So if you round that up, that's about 1,000 watts continuous. With those calculations, you would need a rice paddy that was 10,764 square feet, or about 1/4 of an acre, which is surprisingly manageable. That's just for average consumption. That's not peak loads like air conditioning, electric ovens, and water heaters. To safely power a small home reliably, you'd probably need a half to 1 full acre of highly optimized wetland, plus battery storage, plus power conditioning electronics. Now we're moving from mud-powered curiosity to biogrid engineering. So if we were to theoretically maximize the microbial electricity the way we optimize solar farms or wind turbines, we'd need to improve 4 major systems. We'd need to maximize biological output, or the fuel source. Microbial fuel cells are limited by how fast microbes metabolize organic matter and transfer the electrons. To maximize the output, you would need a high-performance microbes. You would need to select naturally occurring exoelectrogenic bacteria, like Geobacter species. You would need to optimize microbial communities for fast metabolism, stable biofilm formation, and efficient electron transfer. So, in theory, genetic optimization could improve electron yield. But ecological stability would matter more than raw speed. You would need high root exudant plants, so you'd choose plants that leak more sugars into soil, that grow rapidly, and that would tolerate flooded anaerobic oil. The ideal candidates would be rice, wetland reeds, cattails, or any other fast-growing marsh grasses. More root exudant equals more microbial food equals more electrons. You would want to optimize environmental conditions, so you'd carefully control soil moisture. Temperature, the sweet spot would be between 20 to 35 degrees Celsius, the pH balance, and the nutrient levels. Essentially, you'd run wetlands like controlled bioreactors. You would want to maximize the electrode efficiency, which is the harvesting hardware. This is where most gains would likely come from. A massive surface area. Power scales with electrode surface areas. To maximize output, you would use porous carbon materials, graphene-enhanced carbon felts, and 3D printed biocompatible lattice electrodes. The goal would be to maximize microbial contact area per square meter. To maximize microbial electricity like solar, We would have to, in essence, treat the wetlands like a power plant, treat microbes like energy workers, treat soil like infrastructure, and manage it with the same seriousness that we manage solar farms. We would need an integrated system. Think of it as a 3-tier system. Tier 1 would be the microbial baseline power, the 24/7 trickle. Tier 2 would be solar peak generation, which would be the daytime bulk. And Tier 3 would be battery storage and smart distribution. Microbial is the stability, the solar is the strength, and the battery is the buffer. The wetland energy zone would be 1 to 3 acres of engineered wetland near the community and flooded with a controlled depth rice or reed bed. This would be equal to 16,000 watts or 16 kW continuous. That's steady 24-hour baseline. So the wetlands would cover 30% of the baseline demand continuously for 50 homes. The electrode infrastructure under the soil would be layered carbon felt mats, module electrode grids every 2 to 3 meters, parallel current collectors, titanium or corrosion-resistant bus bars, and waterproof junction nodes. The design resembles an agricultural field crossed with an underground circuit board. The solar integration layer would be a rooftop solar on each home. The solar would provide peak daytime loads, excess for battery charging, and compensation for seasonal microbial dips. The energy storage layer, or the central battery bank, would be the community energy storage building, and it would need a 5 to 800 kWh lithium-ion phosphate battery bank, an inverter system, and the DC bus integration. The purpose of the community energy storing building would be to store daytime solar surplus, buffer microbial fluctuations, and to supply nighttime demand. There would be a supercapacitor layer which would be used for smoothing microbial voltage fluctuations and handling small rapid load changes. The power electronics architecture for the microbial DC collection would be each wetland section feeds into ultra-low voltage DC boost converters and stand-up conversion to 480V or 380V DC bus. The community DC bus is the centralized DC backbone, wetlands, the solar, the battery, then inverted to AC for homes. This would need to be a smart controlled system, so AI managed, to monitor soil conductivity, voltage per wetland zone, solar output, battery charge state, and household load patterns. It would automatically prioritize baseline microbial flow. It would use solar for peak loads, and it would charge and discharge batteries, also isolate zones during faults. The resilience mode would be if the main grid fails. Microbial wetlands will continue their baseline output. Solar supplies the daytime loads, and the battery covers night and peak spikes. The community becomes energy independent for days to weeks, possibly indefinitely in stable climate. Instead of rural wetlands, what if we had rooftop hydroponic rice beds, urban stormwater retention wetlands, park integrated microbial zones, and constructed wetlands along highways? We'd have energy generation hidden within the city landscaping. Power plant becomes literal. The advantages of this would be continuous generation. Unlike solar, it would be silent operation. It would be carbon neutral. It would be good for flood mitigation, biodiversity enhancement, and wastewater treatment integration. So one system would equal multiple civic benefits. A theoretical output summary for a 50-home community would be 16,000 kilowatts of microbial baseline, 300 kilowatts solar peak, and 600 kilowatts per hour storage. So the system provides energy resilience, reduced grid dependence, and sustainable baseline. Traditional power plants is extract, burn, and distribute. The bioenergy microgrid is grow, feed, harvest, and regenerate. The power shifts from combustion to cultivation. If technology advanced further, we could see future possibilities of genetically optimized microbial biofilms, nanostructured electrode networks, self-healing conductive soils, and even vertical wetland walls on buildings. Entire districts could function as living power plants. Here is a blueprint of a bioenergy microgrid. It clearly illustrates the wetland energy field with microbial fuel cells and carbon felt electrodes, the DC bus collecting electricity from wetlands, the central power control and storage with hybrid inverters and batteries, the solar-powered smart homes connected via AC inverters, and energy flow between microbial wetland, solar panels, batteries, and homes. This visual shows how microbial energy can integrate into a modern, resilient neighborhood microgrid. This is a military forward operating bioenergy base. It clearly shows microbial energy wetlands with carbon felt electrodes generating baseline power, rugged battery bank and power control center managing the energy, solar arrays on barracks and structures integrated into the DC bus, the command center monitoring and controlling the microgrid, tactical grid connections, satellite communications and off-grid resiliency, energy flow illustrated from wetlands, solar, and batteries to base facilities. This visual presents how a hybrid microbial solar microgrid could provide a remote, resilient power solution for a tactical military base. The story, theoretical concepts, and blueprint designs presented are entirely speculative. While they are inspired by real scientific principles such as microbial fuel cells, plant microbial energy systems, and renewable energy integration, they do not represent actual operational systems, military technologies, or approved engineering projects. The technical descriptions, illustrations, and microgrid concepts are conceptual and educational in nature. They are intended for imaginative, creative, or educational purposes only. No guarantees are made regarding their feasibility, safety, efficiency, or real-world applicability. Any resemblance to real military bases, installations, or energy infrastructure is purely coincidental. Attempting to implement any of these designs without proper expertise, environmental assessment, and regulatory approval could be dangerous, illegal, or environmentally harmful. Viewers should not attempt to replicate or construct any systems described or depicted. All microbial energy concepts are presented as theoretical models and narrative elements, not practical engineering instructions. I encourage using Google for a step-by-step, do-it-yourself microbial electricity experiment that you can do at home.